This week on the Hollywood in Toto podcast, we check out the New York Times' unhinged attack on the Daily Wire's children's programming. Imagine the craziest response possible, and this is worse. We talk with Crain & Company co-host Jake Crain about his outrageous new comedy, Lady Ballers. It's the film no studio would touch with a 10-foot pole, or even a 20-foot pole. And we reveal the latest behind-the-scenes news from Hollywood in Toto headquarters. It's actually kind of interesting.
Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Before we start, I'd love it if you subscribe to the Hollywood in Toto podcast. We've got new episodes every Wednesday and more bonus episodes coming in soon. Full disclosure time. I write one story a week for the Daily Wire. One. And we're talking a lot about the Daily Wire this episode. It doesn't stop me from critiquing the company, though, or the stuff they put out. Need an example? Well, one of their first indie films that they released was The Hyperions. And it was not good. Not good at all. Oof. See? That's not complicated. But I'm also happy to defend the company when they need defending or when things are going crazy. And that's exactly what happened with the New York Times, which Andrew Klavan calls a former newspaper. Tongue-in-cheek, but really? I don't know. The Daily Wire recently launched a new line of shows aimed at children. The programs promote universal values like sharing and kindness and leaning into your imagination. Good stuff. I don't think anyone could really object to any of that. Matter of fact, the show just chatted with the team behind A Wonderful Day with Mabel McClay, which is a kind of an updated version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Very, very cute, very charming. That is episode 212 if you want to catch up with that one. But for now, the New York Times is attacking the Daily Wire based on its programming for kiddies. What could be more innocuous? Children's programming that isn't political, that doesn't take a stand on issues, that promotes universal values. What's the harm? What's the big deal? The great Twitter account, I'm exhausted calling it X at this point, but I go back and forth. End Wokeness summed up the New York Times' attacks on the Daily Wire. Better buckle in. The New York Times is mad at the Daily Wire's Chip Chilla show because the dad homeschools and teaches his kids about dead white people. By the way, those dead white people are George Washington, Neil Armstrong, Ben Franklin, etc. They're also fuming that the show has a father figure who plays a central role. The horror, the horror. Well, it didn't take long for Daily Wire CEO Jeremy Boring to fire back, and of course he did it on Twitter or X. Take your choice. Here's what Jeremy had to say. There are two kids' shows that stand out to the New York Times as problematic. Our Chip Chilla and Bluey. And what's so problematic? Well, weirdly present fathers. Both fathers are derided as a fantasy for being so active and engaged with their children. But according to the New York Times, Chip Chilla is the far more offensive of the two because Chum Chum teaches lessons about dead white people and leads his kids in fun games and lessons as a way of establishing male authority. It's no coincidence that the cultural gatekeepers of the New York Times have them both in their crosshairs. The left not only wants to add its radical agenda to kids' entertainment, they want to remove good values from kids' entertainment. Our culture has fallen so far, and at times it might seem hopeless. But we created these shows because we have hope, and we believe the best days are ahead of us, and that the only way we can take back the culture from the left is by building something better. All right, I don't care how many checks the Daily Wire cuts me in the future. That's good. That gets my full-throated support. You got to fight back against these attacks, especially when they're as surreal as what the New York Times uncorked this week. We're in the culture wars, folks, and the sad part is that we can't just sit back and wait for an outcome. That's the best way to lose. Jake Crain is a sports pundit, but he's not a Saturday Night Live guy. So what's he doing in a wacky comedy like Lady Ballers? Well, he's making us laugh. Crain is the host of the Daily Wire's Crain & Company. It's their sports program, and he stars alongside brother Blaine Crain, that's a great name, and David Cohn. Now, Jake has a really good resume in college football coaching before he segued into punditry, but he recently took on a different role, comic actor. Huh.
Let's cut to the chase. I know you're not a woman.
Hey, you know how he identifies.
If you could beat them.
What do you know about the U.S. Opens for the global games?
You want us to compete as women. $5,000 prizes.
My lover says you were a great coach back in the day.
Join.
This is the way the world is now. My 8-year-old daughter told me all about it. So a guy can become a girl with no physical changes at all.
Oh, that's called gender fluid.
So I can be a woman on the court and a man in the bedroom. I can't believe it. Nice!
You mean when you're sleeping?
Yes, coach.
He's one of several male basketball players in the film who dress up like women to compete for the global games. That's the plot. And of course, Lady Ballers is taking direct aim at trans women who compete against biological women in sports. Of course, this is the hottest of hot button issues. And it proves scary enough that most movie critics just didn't go near it. In fact, one film critic bragged about, "I'm not going to screen this movie. I would never screen this movie." And then she deleted the tweet that was talking about that. Courageous, Dan Rather might say. I was curious how someone with no acting experience whatsoever could make people laugh. It's exactly what Jake does in Lady Ballers. So I invited him on the show to find out what made this movie happen, what makes him tick, and was he curious or even afraid of tackling something like this? I think his answers will surprise you. Now, Jake is chock full of strong opinions. He doesn't apologize. And I think that's one of the key reasons why you're going to like this conversation with, I would say, maybe the year's most unlikely movie star, Jake Crain. Jake, welcome to the show. Now, here you are, chugging along as host of Crain & Company, and you get a tap on the shoulder and someone says, "Hey, you want to star in a comedy called Lady Ballers?" Now, I don't know if that's exactly how it happened, but I imagine there's a variation of that. Now, you're a sports guy, you're an expert in your field. You're not a comic actor that I know of. Talk about that initial ask and your reaction to it.
Yeah, well, first off, Christian, thanks for having me, man. I really enjoy your work, man. It's such an interesting way that it developed, and that's been one of the coolest parts about it, getting the positive response that it's gotten, and going viral and things like that. It was kind of a brainchild of Ben Shapiro, Jeremy Boring, and us a little bit. We had talked at first about trying to get Blaine, my brother, one of the other hosts on Crain & Company, to actually make a WNBA roster, like make like the Sparks or somebody like that. But it's amazing. You hear all this talk about equality, but then when a guy tries to go play in the WNBA, they tell him no. You go through this, they tell you about the hormonal part of it and all this stuff. They're a lot different in private than they are in public. So, Jeremy one day called us in and was like, "Hey, we want to make this into a movie, and we want you guys to star in it as the Lady Ballers." And we thought it was fantastic because, look, I mean, Christian, I grew up in the era where comedies were comedies. It didn't matter if you were left, right, or in the center. Dodgeball was funny. Old School was funny. Wedding Crashers was funny because we used to be able to make fun of things in society that should be mocked. And having this opportunity, it's the first time we've ever acted. It was a big chance for us, and I think we delivered. We play in sports. I've always said this, whether it's been coaching, whether it's been playing sports, I think is one of the best teachers of life because it teaches you how to compete, teaches you how to work as a team. And that's what we did. And the final product speaks for itself. So we're just excited to make a comedy that reminds people of what it used to be before everybody got so scared to make one.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And, I think taking the challenge is what you need to do, in part because I think other actors didn't want to do this gig. I mean, they were just literally afraid. Sure. When you approach it, it's a new skill set for you. I think you pulled it off admirably. It's shocking how many sort of non-actors really rallied for the film. But do you do any research? Do you talk to any comic actors? How do you prepare? I mean, actors always prepare for their roles. How did you prepare for this?
Well, the cool part was a little bit of it was me, right? Not only was I playing, myself, Jake Crain in the movie, but there were some elements of that character that were very similar to me. And I want to give Jeremy a lot of credit. He let me and David and David Cohn and my brother Blaine and Tyler Fisher and Daniel kind of ad-lib some of the parts. And we were able to kind of formulate things on the sidelines sometimes that worked. But as far as research, Tyler Fisher was a great resource on set. He's a guy that he's a comedian. He's hilarious. Just interacting with him and taking those interactions and that chemistry and putting it on film, to me wasn't really that difficult. I thought the writing was so good that you almost had to screw it up for it not to be funny. But again, I just went back to, going through two-a-days in football and going through winter workouts and baseball and basketball and all that stuff because, we shot this movie, Christian, in a month and a half. It was right before, Jeremy then left to go start shooting Pendragon. So we were up against the clock. So it was long days, but, we were able to stay in there and persevere. And that's what happens when you have great people around you, right? You want to play good for your teammates. That's I obviously analyze, my analogies are all sports. So that's what I kind of compare things off of.
Naturally.
But yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. It was my first time. I learned a lot, but I felt the freedom of us to be ourselves. I thought really kind of shines through in the movie. If you know me, it's funny. I had more friends tell me they could tell the parts where I was ad-libbing because that was my, me growing up, as opposed to the parts that were written. So it was an all team effort. And that's what I think made it easier for all of us not being actors, formerly not being actors.
Yeah. Now, the film was shot in secret to a degree. I think there was a little bit of news about it that leaked, but didn't really get much coverage. Can you share about that process, how you were able to make a movie on such a hot button issue without leaking information, without people talking about it? Because when I first heard of it, I thought, oh my gosh, I had no clue this was happening. And all of a sudden it's about a week away. So, this is my area. I follow the stuff, relentlessly. If you missed me, you missed most people. So how did you keep the secret?
Well, I mean, look, it was something where I thought it was going to be difficult. I mean, nobody's been this secretive since the Manhattan Project, but we were able to pull it off. I mean, we were down in the middle of Nashville in the auditorium, down there shooting the basketball scenes. And if you haven't seen the movie, there's a bunch of those. And I was just shocked that we were able to keep it under wraps to the point that we did. Now, I will tell you a funny story, Christian. We had some protesters out there. Somebody had kind of sniffed around and figured something out because some of, the extras had kind of figured it out. But the funniest thing, and I tell people this was probably the hardest I laughed during the whole production, was we actually sent one of our actors out there to interview the protesters like they agreed with them. And they had no idea. So it was kind of a funny come around. But again, I mean, I got to give credit to Jeremy and them. It's a big idea. And you saw the way it took off once the trailer dropped and had all those views, but they were able to keep it under wraps. And it was really impressive.
Yeah. Now, a few critics have reviewed it. Most didn't. One actually bragged about, I'm not going to watch that film, which is absurd because that's her job. But there was one at Decider.com. It said it was racist and sexist and transphobic and anti-Semitic. Listen, I didn't see any of that there, obviously. How do you respond to rhetoric like that from someone who did see it and then they have that reaction?
Yeah, I just, again, I guess you went into the film knowing what you were going to say about the film before you even watched it, because if you actually watch it, it's not hateful. There's actually a really good message that goes in there. I think that's one of the reasons the movie's done really well outside of, the slapstick humor and stuff like that, is there's a good message. The film has heart. I don't understand outside of you have one position that you're going to take regardless. And to say it's racist, that's laughable. To say it's transphobic, it's really not transphobic, because men playing women's sports is one of the most ridiculous things on the planet. But to call it anti-Semitic, it is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. Heck, one of our teammates, is wearing a yarmulke. I mean, it's I don't know how you watch the movie and you come away with that outside of, I don't like who's making it. I don't like the subject matter. Therefore, I'm going to try and say the worst, most egregious things about it to try and keep people from watching it. But I think it's actually drawn more people to the movie. And a lot of them have left saying, I don't understand where you get racist, transphobic, homophobic, all these trigger words that everybody just throws out willy-nilly now. And if you've watched the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's none of those elements in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think those words are almost losing their meaning, which is actually sad, because when those cases do arise, you want to be able to use that label on them. The movie did hit a few roadblocks, and Jeremy Boring has talked about how even canceled actors, when they were approached about the project, said, yeah, no thanks. Did you have any fear about being part of this at all in any part of the process?
No, there's a lot of preconceived notions about you when you work at the Daily Wire anyway, but I was surprised that more actors who talk a big game, right, about how they want to be part of the counterculture and they want, stuff to go back to normal where we could laugh at things, yet they get their opportunity to be in a film that really highlights that. And they turn it down. I mean, I guess I'm about as old school as a 34-year-old can be. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And if I believe in something, then you're going to see me go out there and do it. And if it was a hateful message, or if it was something that was just making fun of somebody just to make fun of somebody with no overarching theme to it, then I would have maybe had second thoughts about it. But the Daily Wire wouldn't put out something like that. It's again, the preconceived notions, it's laughable. I was excited to do it. We jumped right in, and we're just thankful for the opportunity. And obviously the outcome's been very positive.
When you think about your work on the film, the fact that it's been well received, the fact that you were able to tackle it without melting down or just saying, "Oh gosh, this is not my skill set," would you want to do this again? I mean, obviously you got a full-time gig. I don't think you're moving to Hollywood tomorrow, but is this the kind of experience where you thought, "Gosh, that was fun. I was able to bring something fresh to it. I could do this again," or do you think this is just a one-off?
Yeah, listen, I'm not moving to California. I'm not paying those taxes, but for sure, I would love to do it again. It kind of reminded me of game day a little bit, right? I just enjoyed the people I was around, going through the process of it, knowing that you can do it, right? Because you never know until you try something, and you're always going to get better the more you practice at it. So yeah, I mean, I would go Greg Louganis head first, dive into it.
Gotcha. I want to talk a little bit about Jeremy Boring, because to me, directing a movie like this on a hot button issue with actors of different experience levels, and then getting the tone correct, or at least consistent, and getting the performances out of all of you, I think that's a really significant achievement. Anything you can share about him behind the scenes? Again, he's got Hollywood chops and Hollywood background, but you don't know him as a Hollywood mogul. But I think what he pulled off is extraordinary, really. But give us a little behind the scenes of what he was doing, how he pulled his strings, how he made this whole project come to be.
Well, first off, he was the star of the film, and he directed it. Watching him do that, it was like watching a head coach who also played quarterback. I mean, it's unbelievably tough to do. You're trying to give direction, and then you're immersing yourself in the scene. The best compliment I think that I can give Jeremy, outside of being able to multitask and do it so effectively, is that he understands the people that he's what he's asking them to do and what they can do. And when you show him that you can do something well, or that you're confident with it, or that you can perform, he's going to let you go out there and perform. A lot of guys, especially when they reach a level like Jeremy Boring has, and you've had all that success, you're not malleable with anybody. You have what you want to do, and nothing else can change that, and you want it just this exact certain way. But I thought Jeremy was able, sometimes if something went a different way and we liked it, he went with it, and he let us be ourselves. And I'm gonna tell you, Chris, he's funny. Like, Jeremy's funny. Like, I don't think people really understand how funny Jeremy Boring is. I mean, you see the commercial for Jeremy's chocolate, that's hilarious. You see him on backstage, and he's tackling important issues a lot of the time, but he's got a great sense of humor, man, and he understands when to say when with the people that he's directing, that he's in the scene with. I thought it was very impressive just watching him multitask, and him having the confidence and faith in us and belief in us to be able to let us go out there and do what we do.
Some of the critics we talked about before just weren't ready to listen to the film or absorb it or consider it. But let's just say you're at a cocktail party, or you're maybe at a barbecue picnic or someone, and you meet someone who is kind-hearted, but they do support trans women competing against biological women in sports. How would you approach that conversation? I mean, obviously you don't want to throw haymakers or start World War III, but if you're, engaging with someone who truly in their heart believes that that's fair, and obviously you clearly don't, what would you say to them?
Well, let's get a basketball and let's go play one-on-one and find out. No, but in reality, Christian, and listen, I know there's people that actually believe that there's no difference. And what I would tell that person is this. I personally, who you want to love, all that stuff, that's none of my business, whatever. But when it comes down to sports and athletics and things that are so blatantly obvious, we know that men and women are built differently. I would ask them, if this was so equal as you say, then why haven't any women taken over men's sports? Why haven't any biological women made it in the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NFL? Why is it so one-sided? And it's one thing to be kind-hearted. It's one thing to try and be understanding, but it's another thing when you deny reality. Christian, to me, that men and women's sports is not a political issue. Just like it's not political for me to turn my blinker on when I'm on the interstate, or for me to look both ways when I cross the street. It's a safety issue, and it's right in front of your face. And I just really, it's hard for me to understand the mental gymnastics that it takes to get to that point when you can see it right in front of you. So to me, I would ask the person at the end of the day, do you believe in safety? And if you believe in safety and you believe in common sense, then you probably agree with me. We can argue about immigration. We can argue about foreign policy. We can talk about taxes and the system and all that. But when it comes down to men playing against women in sports, it is absolutely common sense. This is one of the reasons the aliens won't talk to us, Christian. One of the 3 reasons they won't talk to us. I firmly believe that.
And I think that's why the trailer racked up, gosh, last time I checked, it was 14 million views, because the images that are in that trailer, the sight gags, we connect with them on a certain level. We talked a little bit about some of the reactions, hyperbolic on the critical front. What else have you heard from people that maybe surprised you? They saw the film, maybe they expected X or Y, they got Z, or maybe they just confirmed what they thought what they'd see. But I was kind of curious what the feedback you've gotten so far that was the most interesting to you.
I would say probably the most interesting, and to be honest with you, I didn't see it till the premiere, so it kind of surprised me, and I was there when it was getting filmed. Now, there were some scenes that I didn't see, but again, it's the heart of the film, and I don't want to give it away. I've had more people reach out to me and say, yes, I enjoyed the humor. Yes, it brought me back to old comedies, but the message, it was not hateful. It was something that in reality, a lot of parents do deal with. And if you've seen the movie, you understand what I'm talking about. But I've had more people reach out to me saying that they enjoyed the ending, the way it ended, about as much as any part of the movie, including the humor, which I think gives it a lot more depth than what it would look like on the surface level when you think, oh, these are just guys making fun of trans athletes.
Yeah. You're a broadcaster, you're a performer in a sense, and I think that helped make the transition easier
Without
for
a
you.
doubt.
But when you're on the set and you're maybe filming a scene that's a little more challenging, were there moments where you thought, oh gosh, I get why actors are good at what they do, or why they have a skill set, or why they have the training needed? Did you kind of bump into any maybe ceilings in that regard? And I don't think you see it on the screen, but just as a performer on the set in a new environment, did you ever have those moments?
Well, Christian, you're gonna laugh at me. We do a live show. Crain & Company's a live sports show. We do it each weekday morning. And I always said, at no point during that show can we say, "Hey guys, stop. That was wrong. Start over." We're going live. So you kind of train yourself in the hardest way. Not that it's easy, but I will say the 2 things that I garnered the most respect for making this movie was, 1, I didn't realize how much of a hurry up and wait situation that acting is and shooting a movie is. I thought that you show up, you shoot the scene. If everybody does good, you clap hands, high five, whatever, and move on to the next scene. I didn't realize there was a thing called coverage. Hey guys, great job. Now we got to shoot this from 15 different angles of you guys all doing perfect and doing the same thing. But you have to do that. The second thing, stunt men and stunt women, especially the females that were stunt women in this film. I have so much respect for them because we did our own stunts. We went through tables. We had to get run into by NBA-sized players. We went through the physical aspects of it. Me and my brother fighting each other. It seems like every 3 minutes, and not to give any spoilers, but like when you're watching that locker room scene at the beginning, we are really hitting those lockers. Now, I will say, Eric Alday, our stunt coordinator, did a fantastic job. He's got a ton of experience. He never put us in harm's way, but I garnered a new respect for the patience that it takes to be able to go through all that and still act the way you need to act when the scene starts, getting back into that mode. And then the physical part of it. I didn't realize it was going to be that physical. So those were probably the 2 most surprising things, I guess the most challenging things that I dealt with, because a lot of the comedy, if you have any sort of comedic timing, the writing really, really helps you do it, staying in character, kind of being immersed in the scene and treating it honestly like it's really happening in real life. As simple as that sounds, it's not as easy to do as it sounds. But those 2 things I would say were the most challenging.
Gotcha. I can't let you get away without a sports question real quickly. Any thoughts on the NFL playoffs? I mean, who's going to end up in Las Vegas in February?
Man, I think we may get a preview this weekend. You look at the Ravens and the Niners. I know it's in San Francisco. I know the 49ers are our favorite. I think the Ravens are playing the best complementary football of just about anybody in the NFL, probably next to the 49ers, who went through that 3-game stretch where they struggled. Deebo Samuel was beat up. They were beat up in other places, a little bit different than what the Eagles are going through right now. But, Christian, I'm going to be honest with you, and this is something we've talked about on Crain and Company, and I love football. It's my favorite sport. We all have a favorite. But I think the NFL product has been down this year. And I think that's for multiple reasons. I think it's over officiated. You're trying to control the uncontrollables. It's a gladiator sport. People are going to get hit. People are going to get hurt. That doesn't mean you don't try and help them. But I think that they've over officiated the game to a point where guys aren't able to react very well. And then the quarterback injuries have decimated a lot of these offenses. And it's not clean football. So right now I'm looking at it. I think we may get a preview of the Super Bowl this weekend with the Ravens and the Niners.
Nice. Good pick. Interesting stuff. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers going down in week 1 was just the start
Killer.
of horrible things to come. But, Jake, thank you so much for joining the Hitcast. The new movie, of course, is Lady Ballers. It's available exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. Of course, you get a lot of good content at that site, but if you just want to pay the subscription fee for Lady Ballers alone, it is well worth the price of admission. And of course, let's not forget your main gig. It's co-hosting Crain and Company, available on Daily Wire Plus, as well as YouTube and now Rumble and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And as my dad would say, if this was a one-and-done acting gig for you, Jake, you done good. So bravo.
Well, Christian, I really appreciate that coming from you. If it's a Jeremy Lin situation, it's a Jeremy Lin situation. I'll take it. I hope we get to do more. But yeah, you can find us. We're live each weekday morning, 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central, 7:30 to 9 Eastern time. Those are the only 2 time zones I'm smart enough to know. So if you live outside of that, you can probably connect the dots. But yeah, we're an old school sports show. We don't really get super political. That shocks people because we're at the Daily Wire. But we feel like sports is one of those arenas, the way that we talk about it when we're analyzing it, that should be a unifier, not a divider. Unless you're trying to have men playing women's sports, then we need to go ahead and divide that up. But yeah, man, we have a great time. Live calls, a live chat. And I really appreciate your kind words about the movie, man. We worked really hard and we're so overwhelmed and happy with the response. Excellent. I guess from Lynn's sanity to Jake's sanity. Best of luck, Jake, and we'll talk soon. All right, Christian. Thanks. Well, I finally did it. Finally. And let me tell you, no one, and I mean no one, procrastinates like me when I'm out of my comfort zone. And that's exactly where I've been for weeks because I've been thinking about making the show a video podcast, not just audio. So I've got to get the lights, the camera, I've got to get a desk, I've got to get it all working together. And that terrified me. To paraphrase Star Trek, I'm a journalist, not a movie star. The whole idea was just unbelievable. It was daunting. I couldn't even get started. But I did, finally. I screwed up my courage and I hired someone, a local videographer, who came into my home office and said, okay, this goes there, plug this in here, and you're set to go. And I think I'm set to go. I've got a few little wrinkles to iron out now, but I am very close. And that means in the new year, the Hollywood in Total podcast will join the YouTube revolution. You'll be able to hear this show as usual on all your favorite podcast platforms. That's not going to change. But you'll also be able to see me and my guests on YouTube and Rumble. Coming very soon, finally. Oh, man. I am a little nervous, but I think it's the best thing for the show. I've also been working behind the scenes on my newsletter. Now, of course, that's attached to HollywoodInToto.com, and it comes out every Friday, and it basically shares the stories that I've written all that week. It's helpful for sure if you don't check out my site, but it's pretty limited. And its reach is limited too. That's another story. I'm not going to get in the weeds there, but I recently reached out to someone who knows a lot about newsletters, how to put them together, how to make them robust and meaty and really helpful. And now there's a brand new Hollywood in Toto newsletter coming at you every Friday. Now, of course, it's going to highlight the best articles I've written that week, but it's got a lot more in it. I'm going to offer film reviews, updates on what's coming out very soon. Also, I'm going to give you tips on the best comedy videos. There's so much that I see on YouTube and elsewhere that's just really funny and subversive and just high quality, much better stuff than you see on Saturday Night Live, and I'm going to share that with you each week. Now, if you're not getting the Hollywood in Toto newsletter, well, it's easy.
Just go to any of my posts at hollywoodandtoto.com and you'll see the sign-up form right next to my smiling face. There's no cost, there's no obligation. Just great content and a whole bunch of tips to help you make the best of your free time. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And while I have your attention, I hope you'll drop by HollywoodInToto.com. One last plug this week. It is updated 7 days a week. I might take Christmas off. But you've got news and reviews and all the commentary you want on the wacky world of Hollywood. It is the right take on entertainment, and it's been woke-free since 2014. See you next time, and Merry Christmas.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woo-hooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses, so don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.